we can be very much used to the talk around trauma when bad things happen. But what about when you're betrayed by good things not happening? That's what Angie and I are going to be talking about today. So, Angie, what happened right before you and I got together
Mhm.
that had you gone, oh, just, I don't want to deal with anything right now?
I I had I run this women's group, and I've been talking to this woman, and I've known her for a long time, and she was supposed to start with my group tonight, 4:30. And right before I got on this call, I got a text because I had introduced her to the group through a group text and all that, and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, but the timing is just not working out, and so forth." So she said, "But I promise, I'm going to do this." And anyway, it was just a feeling of disappointment because I thought she was committed. So I'm sure that coaches can really understand this.
Yes. And you thought she was committed to the point, you trusted her to the point where you took action,
Right. Right.
welcoming her into the group and saying, yes, she's a part of us.
Yeah.
And so she betrayed a level of trust.
Right. Right.
Uh, and what Angie and I were talking about before we got started on this is that uh, I have been holding these calls for certified hypnotists like Angie and myself for a few years now, and got us through the lockdowns because we used to all meet in person, and giving people the opportunity to be able to share their expertise and their brilliance. And Angie and I, over the last few months, have discovered that it's her and I who are going to show up and no one else. But here's what's interesting: the tips, tools, and techniques that Angie and I talk about, I know that they're taking and using in their business and their practice because some of them are telling me. So they are making withdrawals on a relationship account where they haven't made any deposits. And that's when we can feel like we've been betrayed by good things not happening.
Hmm.
Because I know the women and the men who listen to this podcast, uh, you're the overperformers. You're the ones that get out there and you make things happen for other people. But unfortunately, there is a level of normal that you've accepted with that is not healthy. And so your overperformance will lead to overcompensation, making deposits into an account that they're now accessing and making withdrawals on. And unfortunately, that they haven't earned that right. So we're going to talk about what happens when you have those connections and they want to utilize the best parts of you without giving anything in return. And so, Angie, you were telling me about your knee because we can see that our body can do the same thing. It's going, wait, you haven't made a deposit into our account to be able to use our body like this anymore. So
Yeah.
what's going on and what are you having to do to make deposits into your physical account?
Um, Mid-January, I took a 3-day online class, and we sat in front of the Zoom like we're doing right now for about 7.5 hours each day. Now I gotta walk my dog in between and stuff like that, but it was a lot of sitting in front of the computer. And so it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that following Monday, when I was doing this yoga, right, not yoga, right, daily energy routine with my husband, Steve, there's this position where I usually get down and squat all the way, like where you're not putting pressure on the legs because you're just literally squatting. You know how babies squat, and anyway, um, and I wasn't able to do that. I'm like, what's going on? This is odd. Like my knees felt very tight, and
Mm-hmm.
inflamed. And so I started I've done so much like inner investigation as to what's that about. Like there's because before that I'd had some pain around my ankles for like several months, just but only if you pressed upon it. You couldn't really tell it was there unless you pressed on the knee, inner ankle, I
Right.
mean. And so that to me was somehow related to moving forward, and the
Yeah.
knees and the feet and the calves, it's all in that area. And so I thought, what's going on? Am I afraid to move forward on some level? So I've done a lot of inner work with that, fear of disappointment, like quite honestly, the last 2 years, I put so much work, money, time, and effort into social media, Pinterest, and doing all this stuff. And it really has bore no fruit. And I think I'm a generator in human design. And when we're out of alignment, it's frustration. And I mean, talk about frustration, it's like, um, and so I think that a part of me is protecting myself from further work like that. Like, why, you need to find another way to make things, to grow your business and make things work, so
Mm-hmm.
there's that.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to interject right there because when we have unresolved experiences, and as you said, we're not bearing the fruit, our body bears the baggage on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we always, when we have aches and pains, hey, yeah, we can have a reason why the trigger was tripped on it, but what led up to the buildup of the trigger being tripped?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, okay, keep going. So what are you
Yeah.
doing?
So what I started watching, I don't even know how I got a hold of the names of these people, but they do something called block therapy. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a yoga block, a wooden yoga block made out of bamboo. So you don't tear down the trees, you don't cut them down. And but it actually resembles bone, this
Mm-hmm.
yoga block. It's a similar consistency as our bone. And so what you do is you put this yoga block in certain areas. They have like a class that they lead you through once you get the block. And what it does is you're actually seeking pain. You're seeking pain, even though you don't know it's there until you rest the weight of your body in this area with the on the yoga block. And it's quite amazing what you discover. And you try to isolate one area of the body at a time with this
Mm-hmm.
yoga block. And so I've been doing that. I got the block about 2 weeks ago, and I have been doing it
Mm-hmm.
daily. And sometimes things feel worse before they get better. They feel worse.
Okay, so let's address that for a moment. Healing actually hurts more
Yeah.
than a lot of times the original wound.
Yeah.
I was just explaining that to a potential client this morning. I said, she was dealing with a lot of emotional pain. And I said, think about if you were to break your arm and it would have to go into a cast, but it would be the type of cast that would go up over your elbow. Now you're in this cast for a couple of months and then they take you out of it. It's going to hurt like heck trying to move your arm because your elbow's frozen in place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we hurt, we go, oh, I don't dare open up to that pain again.
Hmm.
So we will allow that part of us to freeze, which then just perpetuates the cycle of staying stuck.
Right.
And when I say we're betrayed by good things not happening, it's like, well, I should be healed. I should have moved past this.
Yeah.
And it's like there is a difference between being healed and actually being able to use that part of yourself again.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you have to be able to, like you said, You're being consistent now with
Mhm.
trying to use these different areas and getting the flow going to them. It hurts,
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
what has to take place.
And it's a flow of the lymph, because you have this connective tissue all throughout your body. It's
Mm-hmm.
called fascia. And so when you seek the pain by putting your body on top of the yoga block in an area, because you do it for the whole body. You can't just put, you're going through the whole body. When you do that, what it does, you have these adhesions where the fascia sticks to the bone, because
Mm-hmm.
of gravity and trauma and life, weighing you down. You don't even know it, how we sit and our posture and all that. And so it starts to break up those adhesions and create space within the cells to receive more oxygen and nutrients and all of that. And it's kind of like the fountain of youth, because you can actually reverse aging this way when you do this.
Mm-hmm.
I can see why most people don't do it, because it takes real discipline. And I mean, we run from our pain, Dawn. Like, I mean, emotionally, like I have for
Mm-hmm.
sure, like totally run. And I didn't realize it so much until I started doing this block. So
Mm-hmm.
I have more of a story here if you want to hear
Go,
it.
go.
It's related to you. You're a part of this story. Okay.
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 Guys, I
So
have no idea what's
I
coming
know
on
she doesn't
this.
know what I'm gonna say, but so it does go back to October of 2018 when I lost my daughter Maddie, who was 22 years old, and that was a very big trauma for me, huge.
Yeah.
Well, when the anniversary of our loved one's death nears, I tended to, like, how can I handle this? Like, I know my body has cellular memories. How will I handle it? So I did a hypnosis session with you. And this was in September of 2019. So coming up on a year before the anniversary of her death, 1 year at death. And so I remember I was in Big Sky, Montana when you did this for me.
Okay. Okay.
And so when we were done with it, I remember we were talking about codependency and not being able to give advice. For me, an area of healing and pain and trauma after Maddie was that I clung on more tightly to my husband, Steve, and to my mom, because they're my two safest people,
Right.
more comforting, nurturing people. And so I, one of the reactions or consequences of Maddie's death was that I was clinging on to them even more. And I
Okay.
think we talked about codependency and not doing that, right? And I said, "You mean I can't give them advice?" And you said, "Well, are they asking for it?" And I said, "No." And you're like, "Well, then it probably isn't a good idea." Okay. So it's
Okay.
all sound advice, right? But
Yeah.
later that day, my ego freaked out. Like my ego, it was, or some part of me, I don't know. Some
Right.
part of me freaked out and it was like, "No, you're not gonna, this is not, you can't do that." And so what happened, we went up to the hot tub a little later that day and I ended up falling and tearing my rotator cuff. It was like to me, what happened was some part of me freaked out and I created a massive distraction.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, that's what it felt like. But to bring this full circle back around, when I was doing the blocking and I put it like right in the rotator cuff area, the pain was intense,
Yeah.
right? But it's been like that in other parts too. But I just started crying. And it was that cellular memory of the loss of Maddie, because it
Mhm.
was so intense right around that time. And then and so that's how the blocking works. Like we have emotions stored there. And so when you start doing this work, it's not just to get more flow in your body physically, but to emotionally move out those stagnant feelings that we have suppressed, repressed. And do you see? That's just an example.
Yeah, they're unresolved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We don't
And,
even know it.
and so what we can do, yeah, all right. So we don't even know it. Um, I want to talk a moment about the Africa close.
Okay.
So the Africa close, uh, for those of you in sales, you may have heard of it before, that you're working with a client and you tell the client, if you're in some sort of service-based environment, you tell the client, bring me the hot stuff you don't know how to handle, and I'm going to handle it for you. And so you're actually closing that loop for them. I was explaining this to one of my clients last week, and I said, yeah, you're here because you're not sleeping. Everything we deal with on the physical level is simply symptoms. There was some sort of buildup that created the environment for those things to happen. And so I said, I don't know what you're dealing with, but there's something and we need to close the door on it. And that's when she shared with me what 100% of my clients experience every single time. 100%. They come to the realization that whatever reason that there is sabotage taking place, it goes back to an experience with another person every single time.
Mm.
We are not sabotaging all on our own. Those symptoms are because there was a good thing that didn't happen. It's not just bad things that are happening, it's good
Mhm.
things that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so I'm going, bring me the heat. It is my job to be able to transform it into something that is energy wise something you can use. And that's whenever we started getting to causes and not just dealing with the symptoms. So, what, Angie, what you're talking about whenever you're getting into what happened with your daughter and betrayed by a good thing not happening, it wasn't just the bad thing that happened, there was good that could have taken place that didn't.
You mean
And
like
so,
her living? Like her living?
yeah,
Well, and also right around the time of that, I left my BNI group and I felt very hurt and betrayed by them. So that's another good thing that
that
didn't
did
happen.
not happen. It is not just about the bad things that happened to us, it's about the good things where there was potential and it
Yeah,
didn't take place.
right.
And we're like, I trusted it.
Yeah.
I thought it was life was going to follow through for me, and
Mm.
it doesn't. It
Yeah.
didn't. And then that builds up in our system that bears the baggage of it. So the Africa close simply says that we got something hot and we need to be able to end it in a way to where we choose how we're closing the door. We may not get the apology. We may not have things turn out the way we thought they were going to turn out. But we still get to choose how we want to end it. Because when we're allowing circumstances outside of us to determine how things end, we will experience learned helplessness.
Right.
We take it personal. We think it's about us. Um, Permanent. It's always going to be that way. It's pervasive. It's in every single area of our life. And then our subconscious, it uses symbols. It doesn't use language. It uses symbols. And so it's going to use symbols to where you're really small and tiny. And what's looming over you is large, like the boogeyman. And it is going to be hard for you to move forward as long as you have that kind of symbolism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the Africa close says we need to choose our endings.
Mm.
That it didn't turn out the way we thought it was going to, but we still have the power to say, okay, maybe that chapter, maybe that story's over. I'm going to determine what happens about this. I'm going to determine how to write the ending because we have three types of stories. See, every time there is an emotion, every time there's a feeling, there's a story attached to it. And how significant are stories? If you couldn't tell your stories, you'd go batshit crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it would only take a few days. If you were only limited to sharing data and facts, no story, no, you wouldn't be able to process.
Yeah.
So the subconscious must use stories. And this is something I'm working with my clients right now on. You have three types of stories. You have poverty, you have need, you have prosperity. And so the poverty story is what happened. And then you move it into a need story. This is what I need. I need a level of certainty. I need a level of freedom of choices. I need a level of worthiness. I need a level of validation. I need a level of growth. And I need a level of leadership. But you've got to find ways to give it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so you do that, and then it will upgrade into a prosperity story. The thing on the prosperity story is that you can't maintain it. A level of euphoria where everything is flowing and working right, we're not designed for that. And so that prosperity story will actually step back down to a need story where you discover more needs that you have so you can fulfill them to pop back up to prosperity. And then it's a cycle between those two.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have unresolved experiences like what you're talking about, Angie, that can keep that area stuck into in pain that we then divert ourselves from with other symptoms, and our body bears the baggage, and then people will show up in our world going, I'm eating too much, I'm drinking too much, I'm on social media too much, I'm fighting with my significant other too much. And it's like, okay, we get that. But all of it points to that there was a beginning that didn't end the way that you thought. And now it's over. There's going to be a death of a dream, but you get to determine how you're going to move forward. So what do you have to add to that, Angie?
So like in my case, going back to the original, just to kind of apply what you're saying, the original wound perhaps
Yeah.
would, I think, be Maddie, don't you think? I mean, like I know I had childhood stuff for sure, but in this case, maybe one thing that it's hard to accept that the good thing didn't happen was her life, and the possibility and the dream of having her around and, all of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's it?
I don't know.
It feels like it to me.
I was going to say, but there's part of you that knows.
Well, then I would say, yeah, that I have had wounds before that, of course, but
Right.
um to me, this feels like the most significant thing around the business, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
And,
um,
and so then we're like, okay, well, that good thing didn't happen. What other good things are not going to happen? And we can wind up being programmed and conditioned to move into experiences that are not going to turn out the way we want.
mhm,
Because the subconscious, as we know, doesn't make decisions. It just operates on the most intense programming and conditioning. And so it's going, oh, yeah, well, we're supposed to find other things that don't happen, or not that where good isn't going to come from it.
mhm,
And we wind up engaging in experiences that are not going to lead us to where we want. And we're like, why the heck not?
mhm,
Because the subconscious thinks that it's not supposed to give you the fruit that you're looking for, the harvest.
mm,
And so the idea is not always, but many times going, okay, I need to close that because I will keep then looking for harvests that aren't going to happen.
Okay. That resonates because since
Mm-hmm.
Maddie died, there have been two harvests, things I put a lot of energy and attention into that did not come to fruition.
Yeah.
Both
And
centered around my business. My personal life and those relationships are quite good, thriving.
right, right.
Is that possible that it's just like one area?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it doesn't. So whenever I say pervasive and that it spreads out from the original wound,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that it's going to stay in that area. Okay.
Right. Right.
So somebody can have a challenge with their health, uh, when clearly it's their career that's suffering.
Hmm.
There's something that needs to be closed there. It's not going to work out.
Right.
Uh,
I know the
but
original wound. It was 2017. It was before Maddie died. And she made a comment to me about, well, mommy, I'm not going to be around forever. Because she was wanting to do something or something. And I had something business related going. And I think that,
oh,
obviously I didn't think she was going to die. Right. And
yeah.
I felt really upset with her, like, Maddie, that's very manipulative, you know, but in
R-
her mind, she kind of knew she was going to die. And so
right.
she was trying to give me a warning, maybe you need to reprioritize. So in
But
my mind, it's like, I can't give all my full attention and love to my family and have a thriving business. I will misprioritize.
and that is true. Sometimes the truth, just because something's true doesn't mean it's not going to hurt.
Hmm.
Okay. So even though she was saying, Mom, I'm not going to be around forever, it's also your business that would allow you to spend the time with her that you could.
Hmm. Hmm.
And sometimes we can't do both things. We have to value one over the other. But can you see now how there could be a part of you that's going, oh, see, the business was wrong. It was bad. Look what it did. It
Yeah.
kept me away from the one I love and needs to be punished.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
By the way, for everybody that's listening to this, hypnosis does not just happen when you're in a chair relaxed.
Hmm.
What we're doing is conversational hypnosis.
Yeah.
Hypnosis simply means to be open to suggestion. That's all it means, to be hyper suggestible. And so when Angie and I move through these things and we share our stories, because you have to have a story, as I said just a minute ago, but those stories allow you to have a rapport with us. When we share these stories, then it's like, okay, what does this story mean? Because all of them have a meaning. And when we look at sabotage, whether it was somebody directed at us or it was us directed at ourselves, we're not broken, we're not flawed, we do not need to be fixed. It simply means the story is incomplete.
Hmm.
That's it. We've been waiting to get different results, but we haven't chosen the ending to the story. Now, the fact that Angie, you've been doing all this physical work
Hmm.
on your body to open up
Hmm.
where it was feeling all of this, that preceded you being able to have this awareness, don't you think?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So working with the block for the blocks,
Yes, exactly.
mhm,
Yeah. Yeah.
allowed you to become aware of, oh, look, my business needs to be punished.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. So how can you add on? And you don't have to give us the answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. But it's how can you add on to the story that is incomplete?
Yeah. I really like what you said that was sabotage. the story is incomplete. I've never heard that nuance before with sabotage.
Mm-hmm.
That connection with, we have to come up with an ending to our story. Like I've never heard that before. And so I think the story has been open, like it's been open with the business needs to be punished. And honestly, I need to be punished. I need to be punished because and I am my business, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
when we're punished, our business is punished,
yeah,
basically
yep.
too. But I needed to be punished for making such poor choices, you know, with her.
Oh, wow. Okay, guys, this is what it looks like to have a breakthrough.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay. And so you can choose to continue to punish, or you can make a different choice. Sometimes we have to sit with it. Um, I know uh, for myself. So whenever you have challenges, Angie, like you were talking about, you reach out to your husband and you reach out to your mom. And I'm so lucky that I know both of them, and they
Yeah.
are beautiful people. Okay. When I go through that experience, I absolutely withdraw and cut everybody off.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Uh, and it was asked of me one time, is whenever I'm like, I don't need anybody, I can do it on my own. And it was asked of me, who betrayed you so bad that it led you to that? And yes, bringing people in, learning to trust them, knowing that there's going to be sabotage. There's always going to be sabotage in relationships. We're always going to project onto other people.
Right,
But
right.
there's a difference between that and betrayal.
Yeah.
Betrayal is when they take the best parts of us and they use it against us.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, for example, Angie brought up that she had somebody that committed to her and then decided to back out. Uh, I have had people in similar circumstances, and they know, or they knew at the time, that I was very open and very giving, and it'd be like, okay, that's all right. I get it. Well, I get it once.
Yeah.
Twice, I don't get it anymore. Uh, because that's telling me that you're not going to commit. And yeah, everybody's got their own reasons, but I have to put my focus on the people that want to move forward. And if that means that you're not going to be able to be in my life, you're not going to be able to be in my life.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I have to do those endings pretty quick and go, yeah, I can't invest trust in a relationship where you are not making deposits,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I know I would have a tendency to overperform, which is
Right.
the reason why I will pull back and I
Yeah.
will cut myself off,
Hmm.
because, oh, I'm not going to overperform. I have had to relearn how to stay engaged, but accept people, not on who they say they are, but on what their actions and what their actions show me.
Right. Right. Right.
But to be able to do that, I've had to learn to trust myself first.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's been my whole theme of this year is really learning to trust my own instincts.
Mm-hmm.
So it is all about self-trust. It really is.
Yes, and respect,
Hmm.
because we won't trust what we don't respect.
Hmm.
If we don't see ourselves as something to be honored, if we don't see that we have gifts that we're bringing to our relationships, personal and professional, and that somebody else is supposed to bring their gifts also. If we don't see what is the brilliant, magnificent parts about ourselves, if we focus only on where the pain is, Well, then we wind up becoming a problem that is looking for someplace to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to respect ourselves first and then trust. So to respect says, how do I bring certainty to my experience? How do I give myself freedom? What's worthy about me? How do I love uh, uh the knowledge and the wisdom that I seek, and what are my leadership capacities? Now, out of those 6 needs, because we talked about stories a little while ago, you got 2 of those that where you're absolutely brilliant and you're supposed to be focusing on those 2. And so that's what you learn to trust, or excuse me, respect. And then the trust says, uh, where do I not need somebody else? That's the first level of trust. Hey, I got this. Second level of trust is I need to make requests of other people in my environment for them to follow through on things. And if they do not, there are consequences. Third level of trust, I need to seek out an authority figure to assist me with this. I can't do it on my own. And the fourth level of trust is when we go, I've done all I'm going to do. I got to close the door. That's that Africa close. I got to close the door. I need to end it. And I need to move on to something else.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
respect and then we trust.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you want to add to that, Angie?
Hmm. It's such a rich conversation.
We usually come up with some pretty good
Oh, I
ones.
know, I know. And I'm thinking about, well, how do I complete my story? Um, because I felt like I've communicated with my parts about, not needing to punish myself anymore. It felt like I cleared that. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe you did to a level. Let me ask you this. And you can ask those different aspects of yourself. Can you live those answers right now?
Can I live? Is that what you asked me?
Can you live those answers? I'll give you an example. So I had to go through a certain level of healing that I've been working on the last year now with an area in relationships. And I had thought I had done my healing work. It was at the beginning of the year. And then it was like, yes, but what's required for our next step? I'm not ready to live it right now.
What was required?
Uh, Opening up my home and having people back in.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And trusting those connections. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I've done my healing, but am I ready to live what that would take? And the honest answer that came back for myself was no, I am not ready to live it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, Yesterday it came through and I'm like, oh, and this is where it comes in about the best parts of us being weaponized against us. It was a very quiet Easter for me, and me and my pup. Um, and I was supposed to have some family over who called and said, we can't because the ex is in the hospital. And so my son, to be honest, is like, Mom, I can't come see you. I got to go see Dad in the hospital. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this is a pretty frequent occurrence for him. And I'm like, okay, um, that's your decision. I understand that. So here's the next time we're going to get together. You've got a choice of 2 dates, but this is going to be non-negotiable. This is going to be something, it doesn't matter what comes up. You get to pick one of these 2 dates, but you're going to commit to this, and there's not going to be any other way around it, because I cannot continue to give to someone, and it's not my son, it's the ex, uh, who hasn't made any deposits into a relationship account, and yet he's making withdrawals on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, no, no, if he tries to do this again, well, he's going to sit in there by himself, because this is what I'm requiring. Remember how I said boundaries? And there
Yeah.
needs to be one where you make a request and there's going to be consequences. You don't always have to share those consequences, but you know what they are. So there's going to be consequences if what you've asked is not followed through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so yesterday I was like, okay, I am ready to start living what I need to do to have it to where people can start coming back into my life in a greater way in relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your
Oh,
question
and
about
yeah,
me, Angie?
it totally makes sense because when you said, "Am I ready to live those answers?" or
Mm-hmm.
and you said for you to live those connections,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I think life is all about the connections that we make, you know, but I think that hmm, that the answer is partly no in some ways because I think there's still healing like with Maddie and then with my BNI experience that I lost a lot of faith in people, you know,
Right.
and in connections and referral partnerships um and I don't like that right now. Like I don't consciously like the fact that wow, I still am not trusting people on some extent to some extent. Like there's my part of me that's saying they're just going to hurt and disappoint you. So why
Mm-hmm.
don't we just cut the crap and not go through all that nonsense, you know?
Yes, I
Like,
do know.
so I feel like, and that's why Dawn, you mean so much to me. I mean, I didn't
Oh.
intend to get emotional here, but I feel like there's all this emotion coming up because you've always been loyal. And I am too. I value loyalty.
Yes, in fact, right before we got on the call, Angie and I were discussing what's going to be our next event, what's going to be our
Right.
next outing. Why can we do that? Because we trust each other.
Right.
We have that trust and follow through. So I'm gonna talk about the emotional account for just a moment. And this emotional account, this shows up whenever I work with couples. It shows up when I work with just one person in a relationship. So um, you have to where you make deposits into the joint account that you have. You make deposits on things that you know are going to assist that other person in coming out at their very best. So, Angie, when I make a deposit into our account, I'm not depositing what I need. I am depositing what Angie needs to be her very best.
Hmm.
And when you deposit, and what's going to bring me out where I feel worthy and significant and loved and
Yeah.
all of those wonderful things. So it's not about ourselves, it's about the other person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, there's actually some numbers on this that if you just want an average relationship, there needs to be 3 deposits for every withdrawal.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want it to be outstanding, there needs to be 5 to 1. Now, at some point, that relationship, one person is going to have to put the pause on making deposits. Angie and I, we do our best to get together every month and bring these to you guys, to where we're having authentic conversations, because for Angie, that's one of her top values. We got to be authentic and real. And so we have authentic conversations between her and I, and you get to listen in on it. So,
It's true.
um, so last month, Angie wasn't able to make it. So she didn't make a deposit.
And I felt so bad about that, Dawn.
Oh,
But
but
I
it was,
did. Like I really did, and I didn't, I was having a I needed a self-care day. And I
yes,
was up front with you. Like
you
that's
were.
what's going on,
And so she didn't make a deposit into the account. No problem. She didn't make a withdrawal. She just didn't make a deposit into the account.
Hmm.
Withdrawals come whenever we're like, oh, not only can I not do something that's going to allow this other person to bring out their very best, but I'm actually going to need them to take their focus off of the relationship and put it just on me personally. I need the focus completely on me. So Angie, if you would have said, Dawn, I can't make it, and instead of doing what we typically do, Dawn, could you do a session for me? That would have been a withdrawal because it would have been off of us and it would have been just on you. Does
Hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So 3-1 or 5-1. Relationships typically don't have a challenge whenever somebody needs to stop making deposits. When somebody needs to start making withdrawals, we need to be aware because, okay, everybody needs to do that. But if those withdrawals go on longer than 91 days, your relationship is in jeopardy. And this is the reason why. Because you're an overperformer. You're going to overcompensate.
That's right.
So it's going to be, oh, they're not doing what they're supposed to do, but that's okay. I'll step in and do it for both of us. No, there needs to be a conversation that things need to be upgraded, moved around. There needs to be some values that maybe are reprioritized, or you're going to wind up resentful.
Yeah.
It could move into contempt because you went from good things not happening to now bad things happening. And once a relationship gets to that point, typically all you can do is damage control. You're not going to bring it back. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's going to take a heck of a lot of investment on the person who's just been taking to be able to get it just to be mediocre. And they usually don't want to do it that much because they've become dependent on you doing it all.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot today, Angie,
Yeah. 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 This was great.
and it's okay when you're not ready to live the answers.
Hmm.
We have to have acceptance of that. It doesn't
Right.
mean that progress stops.
No, no.
It just says, okay, for whatever reason that we're experiencing this, now we're aware and we don't have to overcompensate. We don't have to look at our performance and just say, okay, I'm going to accept it as it is and make it okay that good things didn't happen. And not only did that hurt us, it harmed us.
So how do you um close the story? You said we have to choose the ending. Um,
Well, okay. So for me, with my ending, I've been working on it for a year now. Okay.
mhm.
Saying, what's just the next step? What's just the one next step I need to take? Now, at times there's a part of me going, I ain't going to take a next step. And I'm like, okay, I get that, but I also know that I can't have a petulant child running my programming.
Right.
Okay. So if you want to have your pity party, it's okay to do that. But this is still what we need to do about taking a next step. And then I would have a pity party. And then typically after that, oh, excuse me.
Bless you. Bless you.
Um, typically after that, I would find out the real reason for the pity party.
Mm.
So, for example, there was somebody in my life that I had trusted quite a bit. And I'm going, I'm not going to take a next step. I'm not going to take a next step. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay, go ahead and throw a fit, but we're still going to get back into relationships. And then it went, yeah, well, why do we want to keep these relationships when we're going to keep getting hurt? And that's when I realized that there were boundaries being crossed that I wasn't readily recognizing. And I needed to do something about that relationship. And I did. I drew
Hmm.
a boundary. And when people are used to violating boundaries, they don't like it.
Right. Right.
And unfortunately, it went from LC to NC, limited contact to no contact. And as soon as I took care of that, they were like, okay, I can trust you now. Let's go ahead and take the next step.
So you're saying a good way to do this is to set a boundary, right? A good way to
Well,
draw
it was
an
for
idea.
me.
Right.
The child knew, the inner part of me that had been carrying the hurt. Um,
Mhm.
I knew that she couldn't run the program.
Mhm.
Okay. And so I'm like, I get that. Go ahead and throw a pity party, but we're still moving forward. So that's a boundary.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Right.
I can't draw it for someone else or with someone else until I do it for myself.
Right.
But
You got to
that,
gain your own trust. You got to gain your own trust.
yes. But for me, it's gaining my own trust to recognize that others need to be held responsible.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's for me. I've spent the last year. I am now done with taking the responsibility in relationships for somebody else's poor performance.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you what you're saying because all of that boils down to we learn to be overly responsible in our relationships and to, like carry the burden, in that it's like it's an unfair thing. It's not give or take,
Yeah.
it's like
We carry the baggage.
hmm
One of the scriptures in the New Testament, Jesus talks about take my yoke. It's
hmm
light and it's easy. And so a yoke is meant for two animals, two oxen.
hmm
And you've got one ox that is older and wiser, and you always pair it up with a younger ox. And so the younger can learn from the older. And so Jesus says, hey, be yoked with me. It's going to be easy. Okay, so be yoked with someone that has the experience, that knows how to do this. I compare that being yoked to a horse that is harnessed.
okay.
So a horse that's harnessed, a lot of times the horse is the only one pulling the cart. Okay.
hmm
And so we can be in a relationship where we're supposed to be yoked, and instead we're harnessed, where everybody's throwing their baggage into the cart that the horse is pulling. And we're the horse, and we're going to be responsible for all of it
hmm
instead of going, we're yoked. Hey, in this area, I know more. In that area, you know more. We're going to work together as a team. So a burden says you got to become stronger. I say every blessing you get, there's going to be a burden because you've got to become stronger in order to handle it. But every blessing does not have baggage. Baggage is what other people dump on us.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
goes back to sabotage. Self sabotage only happens because someone has taught us to carry their baggage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, as we begin to wrap this up, what's the one thing that you want the woman that's listening to us that you want her to know? What's the one thing, Angie?
Hmm. I always, when you ask questions like this, I always think about, well, what advice would I give to myself,
Mhm.
to that wounded, it feels like a wounded child, or, some part of me that feels like it's not safe to trust, is that the way back to, I think, from people pleasing to authentic self leadership is, one, we put our oxygen mask on first. One, that has to happen. Like, it sounds cliche, but it's about keep showing up for us. Keep, make us number one in our life, the oxygen mask. Number two, so it's three things. That number two is authentic self-expression. If we're upset, we tend to think, like as a coach, we think, well, oh, I can't tell them what's really on my mind. Like, hey, you know what? You dropped the ball. You committed to this, and now you're not.
Mhm.
Like, what's up with that? What's up with that? Because there's always going to
That's
be
brilliant.
excuses,
That is absolutely brilliant. What they're coming to us because there's something in their life they're not taking responsibility for, and they want us to assist them with.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that's brilliant. Okay.
Number three is surrender, and surrendering that need to control all the outcomes, because that is a recipe for insanity in some ways. I mean, we're not going to control everything. Oh, is that Thor? Oh my
That's
gosh. Holy cow. He's
sorry.
like a cow. Oh
Sorry.
my gosh, Dawn, his head's twice as large as yours.
Yeah. So, okay, so go
Sorry.
over the third one again before
Yeah,
you
the third one is just surrender, I think, to, I say, our higher power, God, whatever you want to call it, a surrendering and letting go. Like, I'm not in charge of most things. My response and how I look at life, that's my responsibility. But most things are going to happen, you know?
Yes, they are. Okay. And you mentioned this woman's group that you have. Give us more information on that, please.
It's a 6 months women's group, and I provide a couple of lessons a month, but it's all about helping them to come home to themselves,
Hmm.
to love, to accept and trust and forgive themselves, and to do it in a safe, intimate community of other women. Just, I mean, we gather in my living room, and it's about trust and trusting each other and learning how to trust ourselves,
Yes, because we can't do that by ourselves.
right?
Somebody was involved in the wound. Somebody has to be involved and turning that wound into the wealthiest part of us.
Yeah, I've heard it said healing happens in community.
Hmm. Yeah, it
The wound
does.
occurred for me in community. It did occur in community, but it's also healing me in this community. Like,
Community. Yeah.
it's helping me too,
Oh,
you know.
yeah. Okay, so if someone wants to reach out and connect with you, uh,
Mhm.
how do they do that, Angie?
HarmonyHarbor.com. So Harmony, just like HARMONY, Harbor, HARBOR.com. And my cell phone is 1-314-422-6520.
Okay. So the one thing that I want to leave you with is that healing is never convenient
Mm.
because it actually might hurt more than the original wound because you've been frozen in place. So if you want to begin to experience the harvest that you're capable of producing in life, that means that you have to get in and you have to take your heart back because someone or something took it away from you and told you what was going to happen with it. And now you have to take your authority over it. But that transfer of authority, that transfer of power happens when you work with someone else. All right. And so if you want to reach out to me, dawnlandrum.com, and everything on there will show you your next steps. Okay. Angie, it has again been an honor. Don't go away because
Okay.
we got a couple of things that we're going to wrap up. So thank you so much for joining Angie and I today. And remember that for a lot of people right now, the world's a pretty dark place. They need your brilliance, your light more than ever. So it's time to discover that on switch and and turn your light, your brilliance, your magnificence on even brighter. Because when you do that, you help others find their on switch too. All right. Thank you.